who has been writing about this issue in the Wicklow Voice in his column there, and also has raised the issue of Brexit and what it means for us in Wicklow, is Stephen Donnelly of the Social Democrats. And Stephen is joining us on the line. Stephen, good morning to you.
Morning, Niall. Hiya.
Stephen, as I said in my introduction there, people across the county are genuinely worried, aren't they? There is a sense of anxiety about what's to come, and really you certainly feel they have reason to be worried.
Yeah, I think people are shocked. I was shocked. We have a very close relationship with the UK. There's about 400,000 Irish-born people live in the UK. I spent about 10 years myself in London. So that means, Niall, there's about 8,000 people from Wicklow living in the UK right now. That's a lot of people. And our businesses do an awful lot of trade with the UK. The figures are 15% of Ireland's total trade is with the UK. And you might think, okay, well, look, that's not too bad. But actually, 40% of all of our food and agriculture trade is with the UK. And also 40% of our indigenous trade is with the UK. So what that means is if you strip out the multinationals, who obviously do huge amounts of trade all over the world, and say, well, how much trade do Irish companies do with the UK? The answer is nearly half, like 40%. So we have the UK that's done something very unexpected and very serious, which is leave the EU. We have a really just depressing response from the so-called, central countries in Europe. There was no reflection. There was no humility. There was none of that stuff. It was all very aggressive, and they're talking about it not being an amicable divorce and trying to force the people of the UK into moving very quickly. And the EU, they're going to try and hurt the UK. They're going to try and make a lesson of them, make an example of them, just like they did to us, Niall, in the banking crisis. Ireland was treated appallingly badly by the EU and by the EU institutions. And if the EU managed to shut down free trade, free movement of people with the UK, then that is serious for us because we have to have our own agreements in place. We have to have bilateral agreements in place. And unfortunately, as you know and we all know, regardless of what you think of Gael and regardless of what you think of their top team, some people in Wicklow think they're brilliant, some people in Wicklow don't think they're so brilliant, but no one would ever accuse them of being good negotiators with the EU. Fine Gael is in the European People's Party, which is essentially dominated by Angela Merkel. And when they were meant to go over and negotiate on our behalf on the bondholders, on promissory notes, the so-called seismic shift they got, and also, the interest rates on the national debt, they not only failed, but they basically gave everything we had away. They walked in and just said, look, what do you want? We'll be the best boys and girls in Europe. We don't want to cause a fuss here. And actually, whoever's leading the Irish government right now needs to be making a fuss, and they need to be heard. So do you remember, Niall, the morning after the vote, we saw the six again, the six so-called central founding members of the EU got together and started issuing joint statements. And then the next day, a bunch more of them got together. But Ireland wasn't there. Ireland wasn't invited to that party. So, yes, the people of Wicklow are worried. Yes, the people of Wicklow are right to be worried. These are they're sort of unprecedented times. We don't know what's going to happen. The sterling has fallen a lot. Volatility on the sterling is going to increase. It has increased. And that introduces new costs for Wicklow businesses trading into the UK. Buying
and Stephen, of course,
selling things out.
Because you're talking about trade and the economic side of things. I mean, there's an interesting line in your article in the Wicklow Voice where you say the first time I had a gun pointed at me was by a British soldier at a border crossing on the way to Belfast. I mean, the prospect of a hard border being re-established there is absolutely terrifying for people who have never even had to cross a border like that in their lifetimes.
They've never even had a gun pointed at them.
Yeah.
I was terrified. There was a young paratrooper, I think, pointed a UK issue military assault rifle at me. He was nervous. We were a bunch of young lads in a car heading across the border, heading on our way to Belfast. Yeah, the idea that there'd be a hard border put back in place, that there would be barriers on the roads, that there would be customs officers, immigration officers, always backed up by men and women with guns, obviously, whether they're seen or not seen. It would just be devastating, wouldn't it? Politically, I am very firmly of the view that we should be moving to, a 32-county republic. Obviously, bringing everyone with us, not forcing anybody into anything. But take Northern Ireland out of the EU, the potential of a hard border, we're talking potentially about, a bigger political gap and a bigger economic gap. Like the North is very, very dependent on trade with the South. The border regions in the South are very dependent on trade with the North. So it would hurt the North, but it would certainly also hurt aspirations for a 32-county republic. So yeah, it is very serious politically for the island of Ireland.
But Stephen, before I have all the Fine Gael listeners texting, I better pull you up on what you said earlier about the negotiating team. To quote the Jobs Minister Mary Mitchell O'Connor this morning, she says of the Taoiseach, he is the right man to be in the room when the hard talks begin. He is trusted and his negotiation skills are effective.
Well,
would you agree?
Yeah, they're effective. They're effective for the EU. They're certainly not effective for us.
But he knows Angela Merkel. He has a relationship with her. I mean, surely that has to go in our advantage when he is, in the middle of those hard talks.
He has a relationship with Angela Merkel, but it is a subservient relationship with Angela Merkel. He basically does whatever Angela Merkel says. Like, I don't mean to be rehashing the previous election, but go back to 2011. And the Fine Gael Labour government was elected on a crystal clear mandate that it was going to renegotiate the terms of Ireland's debt, that it was going to burn bondholders, and it did none of those things. You'll remember as well, it was at the time Eamon Gilmore was Taoiseach, and the Taoiseach of the Taoiseach that came back from Europe and said there'd been a seismic shift. They got Ireland
the game changer
declaration. Sure, nothing happened. The Anglo debt got turned into these IBRC promissory notes, which are getting paid back at an even faster level than was agreed. Yeah,
but there was a serious restructuring, though, wasn't there, Stephen? To be fair, I mean, you can't say nothing happened.
No,
there was a serious restructuring.
I absolutely can say nothing happened. There was no serious restructuring. What they did was they took the promissory notes, which were 2 IOUs from the government to 2 dead banks under criminal investigation, and turned them into sovereign debt and claimed it as a win for reasons that no one who understood what they were doing could understand. Look, Fine Gael does not have form in negotiating hard, and it certainly does not have form in getting anything from Europe. It has a cap-doffing, subservient relationship with Europe. In fact, for anyone who's listening, Danny McConnell's article in the Irish Examiner today is very good on exactly this point, which is, Fine Gael is a member of the European People's Party, essentially dominated by Merkel, and has a subservient attitude to Europe, and that is it's not what we've needed for the last 5 years. It hasn't served us well, and it's certainly not what we need now, because we have to establish the geopolitics, I believe, are as follows. We have to establish that Ireland retains the right to have its own bilateral arrangements with the UK. For all of the obvious reasons. We have the unique situation of the North and the South. We have the unique situation of the geography. We have the unique situation of the amount of trade that we do with them, with the UK. We have to absolutely establish that as a principle.
Yeah. You're listening to Wicklow This Week with myself, Niall O'Connor. We're talking to our very own TD, Stephen Donnelly, about what has been an extraordinary week as we've all tried to gather our thoughts as the fallout from Brexit really has taken hold and consumed all our minds. Stephen, we're always told we have to be on the election footing, particularly given that we have a minority government. Do you think and do you hope now that Brexit can bring Fianna Fáil, can bring the Independent Alliance, can bring all the members of the Dáil closer together so we can really perhaps see this new politics that we've heard about, we can see it actually work?
Yes. Yeah, I do. I think it is already happening in certain areas, Niall. So, as you know, the Social Democrats proposed a cross-party committee on the future of healthcare, and actually Roisin Shortall is chairing that now. The new politics, for whatever that is, agreement is in danger of breaking out on various topics. It isn't and shouldn't mean that everyone agrees on everything. I mean, there should be a robust disagreement and debate and debate on a lot of things. But I think the Irish political system has tended to do well on the north, for example. It has been viewed as above politics, and everyone has cooperated in the national interest. Certainly, the stakes are so high on Brexit, and like, by the way, hopefully there isn't a big deal. Hopefully, the UK, joins the economic area just like Norway, and free movement of goods and people, and all of that stays in place. And hopefully this doesn't become a big deal. It has the potential to become a big deal. My hope, and certainly the position of the Social Democrats, will be that this is a national question and this is above politics. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't robustly disagree with each other, but it has to be disagreement and it has to be debate in the national interest. And I guess hopefully you could call that new politics, because there's also great opportunity, Niall. There are big risks. We've got 400,000 of our citizens living in the UK. There's about 125,000 UK citizens living here who also we have to be very cognizant of and make sure that they feel welcome and secure. But there's potential opportunities. So it is likely that a certain amount of business will move from the UK here. Financial services, for example, likely that they'll move here. It's likely that we will attract more foreign direct investment now, because inevitably there'll be companies that were going to set up somewhere in the UK and are saying, no, look, we have to be within the EU. We're just not doing that. There's too much uncertainty. Ireland is likely to benefit from that as well. So we've got to grasp those opportunities. Maybe with the majority of people in the north who actually voted to stay, to remain in the EU, maybe that's an opportunity for us to reach out and tighten cultural, social, political and economic ties with Northern Ireland. And in fact, maybe it's possible to do it with the UK as well. I imagine what the UK will do is they will look further to North America, particularly to the US and to Canada. And Ireland is uniquely positioned to be part of that pickup. We're all English speaking. Geographically, it works. Culturally, it works. So there's big opportunities there as well, and hopefully they'll outweigh the risks. Though it's interesting, the British stock market, the FTSE, fell by about 4% the day after Brexit. The Irish stock market actually fell twice that far. About 10 billion wiped off companies listed on the ISAC the next day. So certainly the markets, the speculators, the investors, they have factored in quite a serious hit to the Irish economy. So I think it's up to us all, us in politics, you in the media, business people, to try and identify the economic opportunities and make sure that there is some good comes out of this.
Stephen, thanks for your time this morning. Before I let you go, to a text in for you. Please thank Stephen Donnelly for voting to ban the cruel sport of hare coursing. We will remember, of course, that vote took place during the week. But there is another vote this week, Stephen, in relation to Mick Wallace's bill on fatal fetal abnormalities. It's been very difficult for a lot of TDs and a lot of people, particularly women, who have found themselves in that situation. How will the Social Democrats be voting, given that the Attorney General has said the bill is unconstitutional?
I don't know. We haven't discussed it. I imagine. I know how I'll be voting. I'll be voting to support the bill. I imagine that the other Social Democrat TDs will be voting the same way. We'll be discussing it on Monday morning. However, it's just worth saying. I mean, my sense is we'll all vote for it. But it's worth saying that on issues like this, we are looking at having free votes. So that's what happened to Lucinda Crichton, what happened to Billy Timmins in Wicklow. Absolutely disagree with. So my own position is yes, I will be supporting it. I strongly believe that the 8th needs to be repealed. I think the most egregious part of that spectrum is exactly this fatal fetal abnormality. The Social Democrats are strongly in favour of repeal of the 8th. But just on a political point or an operational point on these issues, we would probably have a free vote. But yes, I will be voting to support Mick's bill.
Stephen, thanks for your time this morning. Talk to you soon. That's Stephen Donnelly of the Social Democrats. Do please get in touch on Wicklow This Week, 087 77 11 103. And coming up after the break, we're going to be